She Loves Herself with Jill Ritchie, showing you how to embrace vulnerability and unearth your power within.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of She Loves Herself, the podcast. And in this season, we are in collaboration with the Intuitive Psychology Association, which means I am here with my amazing co-founder and friend, Sarah Gregg. Sarah.
Hello. It's good to be back, and it's good to have these two lovely faces joining us.
We are here with another two amazing guests. So you're not just getting Sarah and I, you're getting two incredible humans. So let me introduce you to the wonderful Alice and Michelle. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, it's so good that you are here. So for the listeners, Alice and Michelle are both fully qualified cohort number 1, world's first intuitive psychology coaches. They signed up to train with us in our very first cohort, and they graduated earlier this year, and they are making huge waves in their industry and in the world right now. So we wanted to get them on and really just talk to you both, Alice and Michelle, about your own personal journeys, your stories, and also how you are using this, any sort of, because you're both from a corporate space, right? I think there's so many people that will want to hear how you can take this into corporate. What made you say yes to this as well? Sarah, anything from you?
I think this is really fascinating. I do a lot of work with corporates as well, and I know a lot of people who consider joining the Intuitive Psychology Association and want to train with us feel a bit like, can it be used? Like, will my clients kind of like, how will they respond to it? Intuition, I don't know. So, yeah, let's kind of even just bring to the forefront, first of all, negative assumptions. What negative assumptions do we perceive our clients to have, and are they real? Alice, you come from a HR background. You're the world's first HR professional. You're also fresh back from glamorous Mayfair, London, from picking up your award in HR. So huge congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, just coming back down to reality this morning. It's a really interesting question around how do we bring this framework of coaching into a corporate world. And um, my response to that is, how can we not? How can we not bring this in? Because I have had nearly 20 years of experience, and most of the conflict, most of the disputes that we see are when people haven't communicated, or people are coming from a place of hurt, or responding with ego. Wouldn't it be lovely to be able to be part of that change? So going forward, we're not having to deal, or myself, not having to deal with difficult grievances or long-term sicknesses or performance issues, that we try and put something in place much, much earlier, just to try and change the culture of businesses. So yeah, that would be my challenge for corporates. Why not? Why are you not doing this?
I love that. And Alice, just briefly before we kind of move on to Michelle, I'm really kind of curious about the changes in HR. There seems to be this trend, and you're the expert on this, that HR professionals are kind of moving a bit more away from that transactional piece of just like, I'm just here to kind of like manage the grievances and do the paperwork. And actually, there's more of a call to value add. Is that kind of accurate? And how important are these changes that we're seeing kind of like in the corporate world to really support, employees in a different way?
So the skill set's changing hugely. So in the next 10 years, I think that those entry level transactional will be completely automated. AI technology, already we are seeing such change. So the skill set that's going to be needed at that level is going to be analytical. What we will be needing is people with softer skills, the coaching skills, the understanding of how to add value from a business partnering point of view. and well as a strategic leadership point of view. The transactional parts should already be taken care of in businesses, but investing in that in the future means it allows people to, if you're in the profession, to develop as well, develop much more than that everyday, holiday conversations, boring stuff, and actually really, like you say, add value within businesses, because that's the whole point. You've got a business doesn't operate without its people.
Oh, I love that. And Michelle, what about you, corporate world? Give the listeners a bit of a feel for, first of all, you are dialing in from a different part of the world. Tell the listeners where you are and your kind of perspective on the importance of bringing this work into the workplace.
Yeah, so I'm dialing in from Hong Kong. So I just think obviously with the IPA community as well, it's so nice to see like people building out from all over the world. Like I know in cohort 2, you've got somebody in Australia as well, I believe, and another one from the US. So yeah, it's just awesome. And I think the biggest challenge for me in the industry right now, and why we can't bring this, like why it's so important to bring this type of coaching in, is around the need to bring authenticity into a corporate mindset and culture that's so dominant that the values are based on metrics, productivity, efficiency, bottom line, and all that hard data, analytical, versus, like you say, that prioritization around employee well-being, employee retention, happiness, personal growth, like Alice says there as well. Mindsets are changing and shifting, but there's still quite, certainly from what I see, and I there's some cultural nuances as well. Like working in Asia, I've worked in Singapore as well, and kind of with us, I have teams based in other countries within Asia as well. There is a bit of skepticality around the softness of coaching, because it's not directly linked to productivity and profit. How do you make that tangible, benefit seen like within the business, and the resistance around holistic approaches, because it's corporates, they crave hard data. But like Alice said, I think there's this slow shift, and this is why I think it's so great we're having this conversation today. Like the more the conversations start happening, there needs to be a shift and a change, and there's people willing to say it and do it and bring it into their businesses and into organizations, working with individuals and leadership teams and the whole organization. And you say within IPA, that ripple effect, I think that's where it needs to start, and that's how the change is going to be created.
Amazing, ladies. Yeah, this is just speaking to both Sarah and I, because we both came from a corporate background before we moved into coaching, so we understand it. I think for me personally, I left corporate because there wasn't that. It wasn't there. It was so black and white. And I know things have moved on in the past sort of 7 years, but there wasn't that. And I felt so out of place and broken, because I actually contorted myself into this tiny little box where you weren't supposed to show emotion. And I managed, my head count was like 260 people. And if they didn't fit in that box, then they had to get managed out. And oh my goodness, it never felt right. It made me physically ill, emotionally ill, and I left as a result. Now, thank goodness I did, because I'm here now, and this wouldn't exist had I not. It was always supposed to be that way. I love that both of you have come at it from a place of, number one, working on yourselves, and then seeing how this can transfer and how this can really help hundreds of thousands of people potentially, with that ripple effect of doing this level of work and bringing it in. Because it shouldn't be, well, you're in corporate, so you don't matter. But when you come out of corporate, you can go and do it, but keep it quiet. If you want to go and do that kind of stuff, just go and do it, but don't bring it into corporate. I mean, we're not separate. It's like we almost have these different masks. Well, at home I'm this person, and at work I'm this person, but it's like, how do we really accept our wholeness and feel really safe to be our most authentic, free self everywhere we are? That saying, wherever I am, whoever I'm with, I am. Wouldn't that be such a wonderful thing if people really felt that and embodied it, instead of having to, okay, mask on, here I go into this meeting, or mask on, here I go to speak to this person. It's exhausting. And it was the thing that got me to my point where I was probably the worst version of myself, and I had so many wonderful things that I should have felt grateful for, but I couldn't receive it because I was so misaligned, and had an identity crisis really of who I was and who I was being. Ladies, I'd love to hear, that's obviously me sharing a little bit of a personal story for me in corporate, and I know I'm not the only one. From both of your perspectives, like, what was it that took you on your own personal journey then of saying, right, okay, I want to really understand more about me and go into this sort of deeper work and like this almost evolution of self? Like, Alice, I'll start with you. Like, what was your personal story and journey, and what was it that brought you to this work?
I think it started a really long time ago, if I'm honest. And it's really interesting because even though we've had different experiences, a lot of what you're saying, Jill, resonates, because really it starts at such an early age, doesn't it? It's the people pleasing part. I worked out, I think, very, very early on that I have a good way of smoothing things over. And so I kind of assumed this role, friendships, etc., and it just builds up. So I kind of see it as like one of those, massive cakes. The layers just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And actually, to get through that's quite difficult. So this journey for me started a long time ago, but equally, it's really sort of a point where I got to of, and I'm not going to lie, the recognition. I mean, yes, I came from an award last night, but the recognition of, I work hard, the academic side, I do more, I add more in. That kind of external stuff ticked those boxes for me. And it still does to a certain extent. And I can't, it's part of who I am. But it was sort of probably there was a turning point in my life 6 years ago where I thought, enough, this is enough. And from that point onwards, there's been such a significant change, but it's taken a huge amount of me looking inward. So it's not the external things. Those things come by default when you're happier inside. And when you were saying about wearing all the different masks, that is like the best description you could possibly have. Juggling, I'm a mum of 2 children. I'm a solo parent, and having to have so many different masks all the time is exhausting. It is exhausting. And I think the biggest point for myself was my health. My health started to be impacted, and I just could not keep going in the how I was. So really, the work through IPA came along at just the right time because I had spent quite a few years getting to this point. But it's been one of the most powerful pieces of work that I've done, because within 6 months, it's sort of that champagne cork that was just eating out, actually, it completely released. And that's what I needed. I need that complete release of everything to be able to now start filling it back up again. So now I'm putting all the good stuff back in at the everyday, because I don't want to continue putting different masks on. I want to, just like you say, operate just as I am, wherever I am.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Alice. Michelle, the same kind of question to you.
Yeah, so I came into corporate 27 years ago. I started, straight off of school at 16. And I think like being in an industry for such a long time at a really young, impressionable age as well, and working with all these different managers and leaders, you start cultivating how those masks are to be worn, like in business and things like that as well. And I would say I kind of developed a real high performance, like trademark behaviors that you see in individuals that on the outside are highly successful, like career achievements, accomplishments, going for the next big thing. And for me personally, having not gone through a traditional route, university and things like that, I was out to prove things probably even more than everybody else. And on the outside, career looked wildly successful and, kind of took me across the globe. And it was my journey really on the inner work side started only about 4 or 5 years ago. It was at the onset of COVID, actually. I was in Singapore. I can see Sarah nodding. I was just starting to come into the peripheral vision of a few people, in the space talking about more about health and wellness on a more intrinsic level, and kind of things like that. And I signed up to a couple of free online resources. There was a guy called Simon, I can't remember his surname now. He ran a 10-day free session. Sarah reminds me Simon's name.
Yes, Simon Hall.
Simon
Yeah.
Hall, that's it. And he brought in Sarah, came and spoke at it. Sleep experts came and spoke at it. People on the kind of energetic side, and looking at different energies, journaling and all that kind of stuff. And with the benefit actually of having COVID and being in your apartment, I had more time. For the first time, I wasn't traveling anymore, kind of crazy travel work schedules and things. And that's when I realized I had just been running on this external energy constantly, and I didn't even realize I had people-pleasing tendencies. I could drive myself to exhaustion very easily, and it was all rooted in a deep unworthiness, kind of root that was very prevalent inside me. And then I just started getting more and more curious. I think as the years went on, I wanted to go deeper and work with other people that took it below the surface, if you like, as well. So when I got to IPA, I had just maybe about a year. I've been back in Hong Kong, taken a new position, which was I was struggling and I was being really challenged. And again, that was challenging everything I had worked on myself, and I had to go back in as well and really develop an even deeper kind of toolkit, I think, to manage my emotions and process them as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of the personal side of just unrooting a lot of people pleasing, unworthiness, fear. I had developed so much imposter syndrome, kind of peer comparison and things like that. So yeah, coming through all that through the IPA journey and also that inner work on myself has really helped on a personal level, but hugely on the corporate space as well. And I think that's where for me it starts, because I came into the industry so young and saw how things should be done by other people and these mask wearing, to then sit with this the last 6 to 8 months or so and be like, how do we bring it next and change that and start speaking up in a different way that no one else in the organizations and the boards that we sit at do. Is a bit scary, but it's also so exciting, because it's let's change the language. Let's, like you say, Alice, let's have a different dialogue that's so much more than what's the weather like.
Oh, I love that. What's the weather like? Well, not very good right now in the UK, I can tell you. Michelle, this is so interesting. And when you said imposter syndrome and peer comparison, and it's so interesting because I bet people would look at you at your level in the industry, right? You're at an extremely senior level. And people, I think everyone has, little bits of imposter syndrome when you're moving around. But I bet there's so many people that would look at you and think that you would never have that. You never have imposter syndrome. You're laughing, right? What was the main thing when you tune in? What do you think when you said peer comparison? What was the kind of the main root of that, do you think, when you were in that space? Was that in boardrooms? Where was that, and where was that happening most?
Honestly, it was everywhere. I remember rocking up to this job day one with my 100-day plan. I had tuned in and written a whole kind of manifesto around how I was going to lead with energetics, and energetics were going to come first. And then I also had this 100-day plan of what I was going to target and achieve, and it was people focused and team focused and digital technology and all this kind of stuff. And then I got into yeah, like you say, the boardrooms, meeting with all the other senior executives across the business globally, meeting with teams, and then hearing everyone feedback what was needed from me to deliver, or I think it was realizing the expectations that were on me, like this, somebody's coming in and they're going to like make a real shift and change, and some of the challenges that being experienced in your organization right now. You know, we've had a couple of years where there's pressure on organizations to, you know, deliver higher returns to shareholders. So all this stuff within the first 6 weeks, I went from coming in so sure of myself and very high that I would hold myself at that level, and I would be able to kind of manage the gap of where other people were. I dropped so quick, I have to say. So yeah, no, going back to your question, Jill, I was the peer comparison and the fear was rooted with being in a boardroom. Part of it was also one of the only females in the boardroom, being young in like that kind of position, but also being in front of my teams, because I was so worried that I was expected to know everything and have an answer for, you know, everything as well. So yeah, whether it was in a team meeting, a one-to-one, boardroom, speaking, you know, out in the industry, I saw it start creeping in at all areas, and I just got, I think I remember saying to one of the big bosses based in the UK, once I got through it after the first year, I felt like I had breeze blocks put on me and I sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and I spent a good 6 months down there.
She Loves Herself with Jill Ritchie.
Hey everyone, I am quickly interrupting this episode to tell you how you can win a £10,000 giveaway with the Intuitive Psychology Association and She Loves Herself podcast. To celebrate season 10X, we are giving away a fully funded place training with the Intuitive Psychology Association this October, which means your fees are fully funded on us. So if you have ever thought about training with the Intuitive Psychology Association, if you would like to up-level, upskill and become an intuitive psychology coach with us, which means you are fully accredited to the top level of coaching, then this is the competition for you. All you need to do is make sure that you head over to Instagram to follow both She Loves Herself, the podcast, and the Intuitive Psychology Association. You need to like the post, you need to tag 2 of your friends and share it across your social media platform. If you would like 10 additional entries, so 10 times the opportunity to win this prize, all you need to do is leave a 5-star review on this episode. Good luck.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can resonate with like all of these stories, all of these feelings. And, it's really interesting because as I hear both of you talk, and Jill's story and my story is, quite similar. And we know that we don't stand alone in this space. And yet, there's this call for like, prove the worth and the profitability, yet we all have done in just through these kind of like touching the surface of the examples. We know employees perform better, have less time off. Sickness rates are a huge cost for an employer, and this all reduces down. What change, like I know, we know from you both how passionate you are about creating this change and being a voice of change, like in the corporate space. What change do you want to create? Do you feel like that needs to be created? Michelle, let's kind of start with you.
The biggest change I really want to drive is, the industry talks about IQ, EQ. Kind of EQ is kind of really developed over the last, let's say, 10 years or so. But there is intuitive intelligence, and that needs to become like mainstream, and like moving away from that like hard data, rational logic analysis and things like that. And like how IPA is kind of built on that blend of science and the intuition and the wisdom. And it's like saying, well, actually, like neuroscience and psychology now is showing that, the importance and credibility and the role that intuition plays in leadership and also in big decision making. So I really want to like bring into the industry, whether I'm working with my management teams, my organizations, the senior leadership teams, like that understanding that like intuition is the most underutilized but most powerful tool that we have. Let's start making decisions a bit more on like dropping out the mind into the heart, into the gut, like tuning into that feeling. yes, organizations still need strategy and they need data, but let's lead with that and start getting to, the more we use it, the more we exercise it like a muscle and trust it, like it becomes more reliable, and we can all of us have it, right? We can learn it, we can tune in, we can be taught. Like it's not like, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So I really want to see be part of changing and shifting the industry into that. Yes, we can work backwards and then looking at the data and the analysis and the logic to show the tangible benefits, but I think that's the bigger shift, to kind of start really moving ripple effects that goes down then to individuals and senior leadership teams and then throughout the whole organization.
I love that. And I really, really love that you said that it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think often, when we're communicating like how we want to work, with organizations or individuals and the change that needs to be made, there can be this assumption of, well, now I have to drop all of my strategy and just solely go off intuition, when actually it's the fusion of both and the magic really happens in the middle. And I think champion that voice. I know people listening are probably wishing, I wish I had more of that in my workplace. And when we think for ourselves, and I encourage the listeners to think about this now, like when we think about when we've made an intuitive based decision, like it rarely goes wrong. Jill kind of will ask this question. We did it in our IPA interview series as well. Lean in and think about what happens when you do trust your intuition. Where are the times that you've gone against it, and the evidence is there for it? Even if you don't want to dive into the psychology and neuroscience of it in your own life, you can see that evidence there. Alice, what about you? Like, what change do you champion? Like, would you want to see kind of like in the workplace?
So I'm going to say that I actually really want to challenge the whole of the structure of the workplace. And I know that's a really bold
I
thing, but
love it.
for me, society is based on an inherent structure. Like you say, Michelle, you climb the ladder, the expectations, it's quite formed and male dominated. I would like to turn that around, because I think actually it brings inequalities, and this is why we see the conflict. And when we have neurodiversity to bring into the mix, wouldn't it be lovely to be able to create cultures and environments that are not just driven by these factors? And Michelle, your answer was so succinctly brilliant, because this is the struggle, isn't it? The proof, how do you evidence it? And actually, I'd really like to challenge all of that and turn it around and provide environments where people go and they can turn up without judgment. They can go and really blossom in themselves. They can be creative. They can work in a way. And with that comes a different level of respect and understanding and trust. So that would be the thing for me, is if I were, and I do work with companies who almost have a blank bit of paper, and we're starting from the scratch. Why do we have to do it the same way as everybody else? Why can't we do it differently? Let's see. And I appreciate we have all of these other measures that we have to, justify and qualify. But there are going to be people who will be bold enough to take that approach. And I would really like to be part of their journey in doing that. Yeah, fairness in the workplace for me.
Beautiful. Now, all of this is great, and I love the bold declarations. But how did it feel whenever you said yes to this? Like, how did you feel whenever you were like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring intuitive psychology coaching in. I'm going to make that investment. I'm going to train. Um, take us through that journey, Michelle. First of all, like, what was there fear there? Was there self-doubt?
Yeah, no, there was all of that, I think. So when I started over the last couple of years with the role that I'm in, I started feeling like internally this need to, I was offered corporate executive coaches to undertake coaching personally. And I chose to go against the grain because I didn't want to be molded into anyone else or kind of part of the, same within any organization. So I went a bit left field and took an external coach, which is in a completely different industry to me. He's actually actually an ex-professional rugby player in the UK and a personal trainer, but he worked with high professionals, you know, and you know, kind of that mindset and things like that. And then once I started kind of like seeing with that and with the inner work I was doing, I started seeing how this could really impact teams. I wanted to kind of rebuild teams and things like that. But then I started kind of not hitting a limit, but I felt like I needed more, and I actually needed to enhance my own skill set outside of career experience, industry experience. I knew I had all this like soft skill and a lot more softer skill sets than other leaders that I've worked with, you know, for, and, you know, have done in the past and things. And I wanted to leverage that. And, you know, that was my difference. You know, I saw that as kind of where I could really drive it. So I decided probably about a year before you guys created IPA that I would look at adding in, you know, coaching into my skill set, whether I was doing it one-to-one with my leadership teams, mentoring other people across our business, you know, or, you know, kind of within the community here as well in Hong Kong. But I just wasn't finding anything that was really landing. So I remember like once I started seeing like, you know, the advertising going out for IPA, I just took honestly one scan and read. And I think I've used this word a few times. When I feel something, it's a full body yes. So, you know, obviously having the call with you guys, there was that fear. I think I remember saying to you, I'm not sure how, with a demanding job, I'm going to do all this. It's you know, been years since I've studied, you know, time is limited and, you know, kind of I'm in a very different way right now. But I knew I had to figure out and find that time. And talking about synchronicities as well, that I knew also I had to do as soon as we got off that call that night back in May last year or something, I think it was. I got a notice from a company that I'm invested in externally to say that they were doing a callback of shares and offering a callback, and it turned out to be for the exact amount that I was able to call back that your course was priced at. So I was like, if that is not a sign, on top of everything else, and the course content just really spoke to my soul. So even though there was the fear and, you know, time and, you know, how's all that going to come, it was just trusting that as soon as that money opened and dropped, I was like, everything else will keep, you know, coming up and opening, and I will just figure it out as I go along.
Wow, that is just amazing. Like, you're so connected to yourself. Like, Michelle, I actually saw that you'd shared something on Instagram from a post from a few years ago, and it was your I don't care anymore era or something, and you were dancing outside next to your tree or something. And I was like, I love this, because it feels like those masks that we've talked about already on this, like they're just like falling away, and it's just effortless. And actually, when it's effortless, you effort less. Do you know? It's like it doesn't feel as much of a struggle. I love that. Like, you were actually the first person that signed up. Wasn't she, Sarah? You were the first person, Michelle. And
Yeah,
actually,
Michelle was the first.
yeah, she was so sure. You were like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. You were like, yeah,
Yeah, you're like, I don't even need you to talk about, yeah, like I'm doing
I'm
it. So
doing it.
yeah,
I'm
it was
doing it.
incredible.
I love this. Alice, the same question to you then, as we asked Michelle.
So I keep saying I never intended to be a coach. And that's, you know, this my experience was slightly different really, in the sense that I've got my qualifications, I've got the experience, you know, I'm happy to call myself a HR geek through and through. Obviously coaching and mentoring come into it, but I wasn't looking to add anything into my business or into where I was. What I had been doing was investing in myself. So I'd had a personal trainer, and the whole point of that was to add strength into my body and to literally bulk up a bit. And I think that because of that journey, so the consistency of training, and I could feel the difference in myself. And quite a lot of other shifts, I guess, had been happening. And there I was sat at Happy Place with my friend in your shadow workshop, and um, again, it was one of those moments to share. It's really true. Like, a bit of a conversation, but I am a total planner. There was never a plan to take on any of this. in September last year. And again, the decision was so quick for me. It was such a quick decision. I think I have the flexibility because I own my own business. Just won't put it into pensions this year. I'm going to invest that in something else, and instead of investing it in external stuff, I again invest it in who I am. And all of those other factors kick in as well around time. And I just got to the point of, you can do this. Like, if I can lift a heavier weight in the gym, if I can run up those hills, if I can do those things, I can do this. And that's where, for myself, my skills came in about this precise planning of how to do it. But all of that just then worked. It just worked. And I think for myself, the appeal was that this was different. I could see that this was going to be different, and I knew this would make a difference. And also with absolute accreditation. So I wasn't going to just do something else that was going to maybe, land a bit softly. This has a really highly accredited training course, and like you say, 1 in 11 of the world. So why not? Why not be one of the first to take that on?
I love that. And I remember when we met you at Happy Place and you were chatting to us and stuff. It was just, we talk about divine timing and intervention, and I truly believe that for both of you, for sure. And you talked about doing something different. Now, you guys have been in corporate organizations, leadership teams, you've sat in boardroom meetings, and there are coaches that go in. There's various different coaching providers, coaches. What is it about IPA, with all of your experience? What do you think makes IPA different from other ones then? Michelle?
Yeah, like I say before, I in my current role, I was offered an executive coach, and I chose to do something different. And this is what I saw in IPA as well, because in the kind of traditional corporate coaches that are offered, an executive coaching or kind of a junior level to a senior management kind of thing, it's very much linked on outcomes and actions and future focused. What skill sets do we need to build into that individual to make them high performing, to drive profitability and business outcomes and everything that's tangible, and it's all hard dated. Like the coaching metrics are set up front, and the corporate sets that up front for all of the individuals. Yes, there can be an element of this person needs a bit more of this area built and developed, and for me, blending in, there is that element within IPA of, there is the future focus, but actually it says you need to go back to the beginning and start with that individual first, and not in terms of how they're going to perform in the workplace, because that will come later. It's like you said before, I think it was Jill, bringing individuals back to wholeness and their authenticity and that voice. And for me, IPA is, you're able to leverage and bring that into the industry, because it's a skill set within IPA that looks at the core wounds and the shadow in a really non-judgmental way that is very open and cultivates psychological safety for the individual, to then really unlayer, like why does that person perform like that or behavior like that, or why can't we kind of get them to be stretched. So for me, being able to go through IPA and think about bringing it into the corporate industry, it's that yes, there's the emphasis on the science piece, and it's grounded in science, but there's also the evidence of the value in the psychology and the inner wisdom. And I just think it's such a unique blend, which is going to really leverage people within the corporate space, whether you're an individual or a boardroom team, and things like that. And I think that's what makes IPA different. And also something that I really realized and experienced through that, actually, with the rest of our peers in cohort 1, was that we're all in different industries, but the uniqueness of IPA, it works with so many industries, whether people are wanting to work with women or youngsters and children, or teenagers, or like in the sports industry, and like with men and things. Like it's just, you're able to craft it and make it your own, but based on a foundation and a framework that you have through IPA.
Thank you so much. And do you know, and we've all said this word a number of times throughout this conversation, which is authenticity. And I truly believe every single person has the right to be in their authenticity. It is your birthright. It is your birthright to be able to be in your authenticity. And Sarah and I chatted about this in another episode, and I actually checked the stat before I came on here. Love used to be the measure to be the highest frequency that there was possible. But a recent study was done, and authenticity is 4,000 times more powerful than love. And to me, that should be a reason that everyone should be working towards. How do I lean more into my authenticity? Because when you're in your authenticity, not only is it 4,000 times more powerful than love, you're free. You actually make the best decisions that you can possibly make. And we've all talked about authenticity, and everyone, regardless of where you are, how you live, where you work, should have access to lean into, how do I return back to my authenticity? And that is probably one of the most important things, and it is the core value of what we do in IPA. And actually, when you talk about working with goals and external goals, everything is about how do I move, and this action that I'm taking, or this goal that I deeply desire, or this thing that I want to achieve, is this in my authenticity? And does every action that I then therefore take move the needle towards authenticity? And it should be that way, right? Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to say it really should be. And I think, all of the conversations that we've had so far, and I know this has been so lovely to have like more of a corporate kind of workplace feel, because hey, that's where we spend the majority of our time, right? Is actually in the workplace. So it's such an important part of our lives to get right. And we know that when we feel our best, we perform our best, and we know that when we can bring our full selves into the workplace, that it's happier, healthier, better for everyone involved, for every single person. And I think we're at this beautiful point in time, like, Alice was kind of saying earlier as well, like where the change has to come. The structures are kind of crumbling. We're in a world of AI and automation, and the workplace is changing. And actually, the one skill set that can't be removed, and the one thing that AI can't replace, is intuition, is soft skills, is enabling that person to become their authentic selves. And it's the people within the workplace. And I think like now is the time to really lean into that space, like whether you're a leader right now, maybe you own a business, and you kind of like want to work with one of our intuitive psychology coaches. Like, this is the beauty of this work. It's so powerful. Alice. Oh, sorry, Michelle, go.
So I was just going to add on to that, because you're saying about the stats there with like 4,000 times more powerful, like authenticity, like we know this through going through the course in our own inner work as well. And right now, it's an intangible, like invisible thing, but you feel it inside, don't you? But I honestly, at the root of me, believe that like it's such an intrinsic, like invisible skill set that leaders need to have, like, kind of going into the corporate industry. Like, I just think that, bringing authenticity as a leader, and the ripple effect that has, because yes, it changes you as an individual and you come back to wholeness, but actually, like, what that I believe fundamentally will do is it drives cultural changes, from the top down, and that ripple, it creates trust, because you've got psychological safety of your leaders that are leading, as well. They're having conversations where they're open and vulnerable, and they are speaking to their teams like they are people, like they're humans, and like that drives employee engagement, and all of that stuff. So I think as an individual, returning to authenticity is so powerful, but if you can be brave enough to bring that in, and like Alice made the bold statement, brave enough to work with leaders that are also brave enough to kind of then take that into the workplace and be vulnerable and open up and have conversations, it drives so much more trust, culture, openness, empathy, and ultimately that drives such a big driver for success for businesses, right?
Yeah, I'm also equally as passionate about this. Like most of my work is with corporates for this reason, because as well, like when you go in and you work with kind of corporates or SMEs, whoever, like businesses, workplaces, often the person who is in that leadership role, the ripple effect that it has in their life is absolutely incredible. Because I think sometimes, and this is a generalization, but sometimes what we see, in those leadership more kind of senior roles is someone who's typically very, very in their head, is very, very like logical focused, who really wants to drop in and feel a little bit more, and knows that they have to go there, but needs to feel safe to do that. And actually, when you go into the workplace and the workplace gives you that permission slip to go there, it's incredible. Like the doors that I've seen that open for leaders within roles, how they've gone then fully dived in then, like, I would go in and work with them, be like, I don't know about this, I'm not sure. And then the next thing they're off on a retreat and they're reading all the books, and their families change and their lives have changed. Like it's so, so powerful to bring this in. Alice, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add, like to that, in terms of the clients that you've even worked with. What changes have you seen?
Yeah, and I have to say, Michelle, excellent answer in summary
Mm,
of how it is in reality. I think one of the things that I see leaders do is take all the tools that are out there. So potentially they try, and everything has a place. But for myself, if you're going to do different types of personality psychometric testing, you're putting people into a box, and you're putting somebody into a box of something that's been developed and benchmarked against somebody else's opinion. And so what we end up doing is having leaders who use these tools because they think that's going to help them. Oh, we're going to do this, and now we're going to call people different colors or different letters, and we've done all of this, we've invested in this. Why is it still not working? When actually we know as a reality, people don't fit into boxes. People all come with different standpoints. If you're starting to grade them against, and again, there is a huge amount of research under it, and I'm not discrediting that, but just because you don't fit that criteria doesn't mean that you haven't got these qualities or these behaviors. So for myself, actually focusing on what are the growth behaviors, how can you get to that point, that comes from people unpacking, unraveling, and then when they've got to the part where actually they understand who they are, it really doesn't matter which box they sit in, because there are no limits then, are there? You do not need to be in a square at all. So yeah, I don't think I can answer any more than Michelle's already so succinctly said, but that to me is the freedom. That's the freedom of coming with a completely different mindset and an approach towards coaching leaders, managers, people. And again, I think that's the other point. I don't think this should just stay at the senior level. I feel really passionate that every single person in a company should have access to coaching.
Yeah, everyone has
Yeah.
access to those tests, right? That you said. Everyone's done one of them, regardless of what level you are in corporate. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm that personality. So then you take on that label and then you start behaving that way. And actually, like you said, it might be because they're frozen in time from something that's happened in their past, or they've been navigating something like grief or something that's happened. They haven't had access to the tools to work through something. And then all of a sudden we're labeling them as difficult, or they're this type of person. And actually, you mentioned unlayering, unpacking. And that's something that we talk a lot about. And it's one of our techniques. It's one of my favorite techniques, is unlayering. To really get to underneath it. Like when you said, when you go underneath it, you realize that you're whole and complete, and it's all of the layers that are put upon us. But the most empowering thing you can do for someone is to bring them back to their authenticity. How do you do that? You unpack. You don't put them in another box. You don't give them another little test to do and say, oh, you're this color or you're that. And yeah, there is evidence towards it, but it is evidence based on how that person is at that particular time. It doesn't take into account what's happened perhaps in their life that's made them show up in that way. What would you say, and this is a question for both of you, like you guys are trained in 34 techniques, right? I put you on the spot now. What would you say is the one that that is one of your kind of more go-to ones that you think, actually, this is such a good one that you think you could use with anyone in corporate? I'll go to you first, Alice.
That's a really difficult question because I so there are two that I think are really impactful. I think when the time is right to go into inner child work, I think that is by far the most powerful moment for people when they start to sort of to really unpack the inner child work, and the technique is so powerful with the IPA model. And having done previous stuff for myself, it shifts completely differently. I also think the unlayering and getting to the heart of the issue. So for me, we all do this surface level. I can give that answer, but really, what sits underneath that, what really is at the heart of that, and it's getting people to feel it, not think it, to feel it. And I think once you can literally see the light bulb turn on when someone goes, "Oh my God, I have never ever seen it in that way before." So those to me are the I don't want that surface level. This isn't that, like, it's not worth my time. It's not worth your investment for us just to operate here. So I think those two are the huge turning points for people. Actually, I'm going to add in a third. The third one is the future visualization. That I also think, because that opens up your mind to being, again, I'm not who I am right now. Look at all of the potential that could come. The person I was 5 years ago, very different to the person I am today. If I'd had that technique, could I have visualized? Could I have seen? Could I have looked at my future self? Perhaps. I'm not sure. So those three, I would say three. They're my top three.
Love, love, love. They're some of our favourites as well. Michelle, same question to you.
I'm sitting here nodding away because I'm like, yes, so like it's really hard just to pick one. And I would have gone in with inner child first as well, and then, like you say, like blending it in, like with the unlayering, and getting to the heart of it as well. And I would also say, once you get through that work, I really love, and I've used it with clients that I've worked with, is scripting as well, when they're preparing ahead for a particular presentation or event or a shift that they're needing to make, like in their career as well. But actually, what I had seen with my clients as we were kind of going through and studying and doing our coaching hours was how powerful these tools were, but actually within the corporate space, it's really challenging to get individuals to that place. So I didn't appreciate in the beginning, but I really learned to appreciate it kind of once I was several sessions in with clients, that I actually needed to take a step back, and I changed my approach in my sessions with certain individuals that kind of associate with high performance. And we did initially just a lot of work on nervous system regulation. Initially I was kind of doing the rapid intuitive trust techniques, or a quick 4 or 5 minute meditation, freestyling, because I can drop into my own body very quickly. But that rapid intuitive trust, I have used that with every client within that I've worked with within like the industry as well, and done that for several sessions before I've tried to then bring in like the heart of the issue or inner child, and we've had to go back, and again, it's okay, like we are where we are, and you're just not ready yet, and let's just spend time like in that. So yeah, all of the techniques are incredible. It's hard to pick one. I think it's all rooted and grounded in getting the nervous system regulated and getting the client to take that out, not just within the sessions that we do with them, but really getting them to integrate that practice, which can be a resistance as well for them, especially if they've never done any meditation or integration and grounding and journaling. Yeah.
Such powerful answers, and it's so great like having this framework that you can move into and have that flexibility as well to like bring it to your own, like you were saying both of you before, there's a whole array of students that train with us from kind of sports, HR, corporate, holistic health, and everything in between. But what really has shown through in this podcast is both of your authenticity, both of like who you are and what you're here to do. And I know I'll speak for both of us. I feel so honored to be in the presence of two real change makers, like two real change makers in this space who are bold, who stand in their authenticity, who know the power of this work, who have felt it and deeply embodied it for themselves and are bringing it out into the world. It's really, really incredible. To wrap up, let's just touch on what you're excited about for the rest of like 2024. We're kind of at the halfway point of this year. What's one thing that you're looking forward to? It can be related to your coaching, it could be something separately, but what's one thing that you're looking forward to? Michelle.
I would say I'm looking forward to getting braver about bringing this into more conversations in work. And, you know, I've gone through the training, my confidence has built, I'm accredited, you know, like Alice said, like, and that stands so firmly. And now it's like, okay, let's challenge and let's start making those changes. Let's have those conversations, you know. And yeah, so I think I'm excited to like bring it into the one-to-ones and the meetings, you know, and just start seeing that first and testing the waters of how you go with individuals and groups and, you know, collectives and things. That's probably the most exciting thing, that just to start bringing it into real life, get out of our, you know, masterclass and the safe peer coaching and do what we say we're going to do. You know, we've got this heart and passion to like change the industry, and it's now being like, okay, rip the plaster off and just start talking about it and doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and I love Michelle. You're both of you actually are part of our IPA membership as well, which is really lovely because, for those of you that don't know, you know, after you kind of graduate, we have varying levels of post-certification support, whether that's free or whether it's kind of like, you know, more intense, like with the membership. So it's lovely, to see you kind of like start taking that bold action in real time as well. Alice, what about you?
Well, there's been quite a lot of achievement in the first 6 months this year
Yeah.
already. So, yeah, I want to do, I am very fortunate that I have a client base who have been very receptive to me coaching already. So I coach in two of my retained clients already, which is fantastic. I have also been coaching others in a corporate environment who link through mentoring, etc. So I've I feel like that's a real milestone already that people are saying yes to it. For myself, it's slight deviation from out of corporate because for me,
Mm.
like I said, I want this to be incredibly accessible. And so I'm going to be launching one-to-one, face-to-face remote working with individuals as well. So that's a bit of a step change for me and moving away from necessarily the corporate, but that's because I really, really feel that this needs to be accessible and it needs to be affordable, and it's doing it from both ends.
Yeah.
So that for me is going to be a huge impact because those people can go back into their workplace and they can start talking about it. And so for me, that's how I want to join it up. So yeah, create a different site of community.
Oh, it's
Amazing.
Oh, it's so good. And actually, I'm just thinking by the time this podcast comes out, people can reach you via our website because you are on our coaching, our IP coaching directory, which is on our website, and we will drop the link. So if anyone did want to reach out to either of you, then they can. You are both amazing. I just want to finish on a question. How has IP changed your life in the last sort of 6 to 9 months? Would you say, Alice, I'll start with you.
I can instantly say it's how I respond to things. So the noise of life can be quite distracting, and how I respond to external things, um, that to me has been the biggest test. So I just do not go back into those repeated patterns, and I notice it, and I have changed, and I respond differently. I don't absorb it. I don't. Somebody else's words do not impact me anymore, and that has been the biggest point because whatever happens, I can pull myself back to the present. With two children, this morning I will share when I shared with them, guess what? Mum did this last night. And my son said, oh, great, can you pass the milk, please? I was like, there's reality again.
Back to reality with the kids, Alice.
Yeah, it makes no difference. I was like, do you know what? That's exactly it, isn't it? It really doesn't matter. It's about how you are in that present time. So that's been the biggest part for me, is just not holding on to everybody else's rubbish.
Oh, well, what an absolute gift to be able to have. And I think so many people listening to this would absolutely want that in an instant, Alice. So absolutely love it. Michelle, the same question to you.
I think there's two areas to me that have really just rooted down in me, and is, I think, something that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. It's the ability to be present. I always was goal orientated, goal focused. I still am to a degree, because those things excite me, like stretching and achieving, but it's like not attached to the outcomes of things. So that ability to be present and enjoy the moment, and see the joy that I have had this year and continue to have in the smallest moments, like versus big achievements, is just, it's priceless. And I have a second thing I would say as well. It's the, how do you say it? I have so much. I always had a big heart, but I feel now, like when I speak to people, that like you're saying, that you don't get deterred by anyone or irked by anybody. I really look at people now and like come at them with so much love, regardless of how they are behaving, acting, what they're saying with me. Like, and I think that's because like you've got so much love for yourself that you're able to open it up and see somebody where they are and where their map of the world is.
Oof. Wow.
Beautiful.
Inspired us, Sarah. How are you feeling after that?
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, so beautiful.
So beautiful. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts for saying yes, for trusting us, and allowing us to take you on that journey. When we created IP, it was never just about Sarah and I. We need people like yourselves to go out and take it out to the world. We're just two people, but with you guys and the other graduates and students, I mean, the ripple effect that has. And yeah, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for coming on. What a beautiful conversation. And I hope that the listeners really I hope you guys that are listening to this, you feel inspired by this, because these two incredible women came at this with challenge in their life, with a very busy life, with all of the reasons why they wouldn't do this, but they acted in spite of fear, and they went for it and they did it, and now they're creating incredible impacts in the world. So amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Sarah, Alice and Michelle.